We're going to be discussing and showing the use of blasting using ground glass and corncob as the media to initially take the stain that's on these logs off and get down to good bare wood. Some of the unique challenges we have with log homes in terms of staining are little features such as these small little checks or cracks in the logs, some of the knots with the holes around them. They make it more challenging, and we need to make sure that those areas get saturated with stain in order to protect the wood. Again, on this particular log, there's some residue of some chinking or caulking that was present there before. The blasting will not take this rubbery substance off. The blast media just bounces off of it. So it's best to take that off with a scraper prior to blasting. And it's just a matter of quickly scraping off that old caulking. And if you do that prior to blasting, then everything's going to have a nice uniform appearance after it's blasted. In this circumstance, we're going to do the prep with a combination of ground glass blasting and corncob blasting to kind of show the difference of those two. I have found those two elements to be the best in terms of working with logs. Neither corncob nor this special ground or crushed glass has toxic dusts, but no dust is good. So we're going to protect ourselves real well from the dust by wearing a special respirator system. This particular system has a battery operated fan pump that pulls air in, filters it out, and blows it into this hood. So I'm totally portable. I don't have to drag a hose around with me, and it keeps me safe from the dust. Also protects my eyes from any of the dust or bounce back when I'm blasting. I am doing the top section of both of these log walls with the ground glass. This is the blasting unit, and to turn this on, I have to pull this red lever down, squeeze the paddle. It takes about 5 to 10 seconds for it to totally power up. So I want to start pointing this in a safe direction, get it going good, then I'll come up, start to do the blasting. The opposite's true when I turn it off. When I let the paddle back up, it takes it a good 5 or 10 seconds again to stop blasting. So just remember the lead and the lag time. Let up with the paddle, point it in a safe direction until the air stops flowing. Now I'm going to demonstrate on the lower section of these two using corncob, ground up corncob as the media. The kernel blasts high pressure air that has a mixture of the corncob and or the ground glass, comes through this nozzle at high velocities, and that's what picks off the paint and the stain off of the walls. One thing to remember if you're doing the blasting is technique, again, is very important in terms of how close you are. If you're too close, sometimes you can tear the wood up. Too far away, it doesn't do very good. And also the technique in terms of we can't come across and stop for any period of time at all. Even just a fraction of a second stopped in one spot will eat deeper into the wood and give you an uneven texture. So we need to make sure that we use a very smooth, all the way across the log, feathering in and out at both ends in order to get a good uniform finish on the log. One of the advantages of the ground glass that I've noticed is when it strikes the surface, it shatters, just turns into a fine dust, which then can be just kind of raked into the grass normally, or kind of blown away. Corncob, on the alternative, starts to build up a pretty deep pile of corncob. And even though it's biodegradable, when it starts getting very deep, a lot of times it'll soak up moisture, it'll start to mildew. Other disadvantages of the corncob is it tends to fill up these little down-facing log checks. And if that's not blown out real good, that'll absorb water, keep water into the logs, and that's a real negative as well. So all in all, I think for the work that I'm going to be doing in the future, we'll be switching a lot more over to the ground glass. Some of the things, some of the advantages of the corn cob, because it is less aggressive. Typically, I don't have to worry about scratching or pitting glass. Also, some of the plastic trim around windows, vinyl clad, so forth, the corn cob won't damage. With the ground glass, it probably will, so one will have to be a lot more careful in their masking. The ground glass is much cleaner. There's a nicer texture to it. If we really look close at the texture here, you definitely can see that there is some texturing of the wood. That in and of itself still may be a little too rough for some very picky customers, but it'd be much easier to go over that and smooth that out with secondary prep than it would if we move to a real close-up of these lower logs. They're much more deeply textured, and there's a lot more of the old stain remaining behind. So this is going to take a considerable amount of additional prep. One thing to consider is these logs are adequately prepped in terms of we could stain directly over them the way that they are. The wood's prepped properly, it's clean, it's down to good solid bare wood. So if the texture wasn't an issue in terms of the aesthetics value of it, we could go ahead and stain right now. But if we were doing interiors, or if we were doing projects that the homeowner really wanted very smooth logs, then we'll move on to additional optional prep methods.